Well, hello, Internet. Recently, in a live stream, I told the story about while in college how I trained myself to sleep just 3 hours a day. And a lot of people liked that live stream and they told me I should share it. So I'm going to share it today. And it's something that I basically continue to do 25 years later. So here's the story of how I trained myself to sleep 3 hours a day. So we have this philosophy teacher. I don't know why, but the text had something to do with time. I didn't write it down, and that was over 27 years ago, whatever. It was a long time ago. So I don't remember exactly what we were talking about. But I basically said, wouldn't it be awesome if we didn't have to sleep? And he said, well, you don't really have to sleep. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, you have to sleep, but you don't have to sleep 8 hours. That's silly. There's no reason for sleeping 8 hours. And I said, well, tell me the secret. How many hours do I have to sleep? And he said, well, a lot of research has been done. Again, I'm telling you what this guy told me. I'm not an expert on this stuff, aside from the fact that I basically have lived with it for 25 years, but whatever. So anyway, he says, you only need to sleep about 3 hours a day. And I said, 3 hours a day? I can't even imagine that that's possible. And he said, well, there's this thing called polyphasic sleep. And he said, I've heard a lot of people do it. I've never met anybody personally, but I have heard people do it. And I said, well, what is it? He says, well, basically what you do is you take 6 naps every day for 30 minutes. So, of course, my math is good. 6 times 30 equals 3 hours. And I was like, is it really something that you really believe is humanly possible? He's like, oh, yeah. He's like, it's done regularly. And I said, okay, I never really heard of it. Well, I was coming into Christmas break. I went home for Christmas. Then I wanted to come back to school early. So what I decided to do was I had about a week and a half before school started up again. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to try polyphasic sleep during this break period and see what happens. Well, I decided that if I was probably more than likely going to be tired, and I was a genius, obviously. And so I decided that I would structure my times in a number format that would be easy to remember. Now, there's a convenience store that I used to go to all the time. It's called 7-Eleven. So I decided, and I also looked at my schedule for the school year. Yes, that is really what polyphasic sleep really focuses on, is maximizing REM sleep. That is like the whole reason that you're able to do it. So I decided that I was going to sleep based off of my schedule and my lack of my foretelling of my lack of memory. I was going to sleep at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m., 11 p.m., 3 a.m. So 11, 3, 7, 11, 3, 7, 11, 3. I thought, no problem, I could remember that, and it also perfectly fit into my schedule. I basically fell asleep for a half an hour right before I went to work. So I would sleep for a half an hour, I would get dressed in the morning, and then I would lay down in bed, I would sleep for a half an hour, then I would wake up, and then I took off. Well, the first time I tried to go back to sleep at 7 o'clock. So this, basically what happened was, well, I should tell you some things that I thought of. My goal was I would never miss a nap. The philosophy teacher said the way people get that mess up is they decide, oh, I can skip this nap, and it ends up coming back to bite them. Otherwise, they oversleep and things just get wacky. He says, I really believe you could do it, because I was basically known for just being a stubborn person. He says, I think you can actually do it, because I think you are stubborn enough to stick to these rules. So I decided I was never gonna miss a nap. I was going to never oversleep. And he also, the philosophy teacher, said caffeine is a big no-no. Don't drink caffeine. That'll completely mess up the whole entire system. So that's the rules that I had. I'm going to sleep at 7-11, 3, 7-11, 3, no caffeine, never miss a nap. All right? What are beta waves? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. So basically the way REM sleep, somebody said Joe Flu said, sorry, that's what your name looks like to me. Joe Flu said, mentioned REM sleep. Well, basically, I looked up what happens to you if you don't sleep. And you mainly suffer from memory loss. You have severe mood swings. You have inability to concentrate. And eventually, this will start to affect your immune system. All right, so that's some of the reasons why we needed to sleep. So the very first day, I wake up, I woke up at 3. What did I do? I have all my notes from when I was in school, exactly what I did. Okay, so the very first day I considered to be at 11 p.m. I took a half-hour nap at 11 p.m. After an entire day of no naps. I took an 11 p.m. nap. And then I woke up at 11:30. And that was basically it, leading into my next nap that would then be at, what would it work out to be? At 3 a.m. So I had an entire day of working, going to school, no, this was the first day, or I think the second day of school break. I take 11 o'clock, I get up at 11:30, and now I cannot go back to bed until 3 a.m. in the morning. So, of course, I am completely exhausted at this point. I think actually taking that 11 p.m. nap really messed me up even worse because I was already tired. Then I went to sleep. Then I immediately forced myself to wake back up. So until I got to that point where I could take my second nap at 3 a.m., I couldn't really concentrate. I was fatigued, of course, and I was bored. And I thought, well, I'll just read a book or something like that. But whenever I picked up a book, I noticed that I started to doze off. And I'm reading this from my notes. So what I decided to do was to save myself even more time. What I used to do is I would actually make my lunches and dinners, and normally it would be one meal. And I would make them all at one time. And I would eat them then for the rest of the week. So I only would cook once. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to fall asleep if I sit in a chair. I can't read. I can't really do anything else. And so what I decided to do was to make my weekly meals, my lunch and my dinner. And of course, because I was dozing off and not really paying attention, I sliced my knuckle, and I still have the scar to this day on this finger. I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it. It's right here. I sliced that knuckle off whenever I was trying to cook half awake. I then got to 3 a.m. and I was able to take my nap. I woke up again, didn't really feel all that wonderful. I got kind of bored, and I thought, well, what can I do that would keep me awake and also be something to do? So I took a walk, and I walked for over an hour around the school, because I didn't know what else to do. Actually, this is before my 3 a.m. nap. I basically woke up at 11:30. I started to make myself my lunches and dinners for the week, and then I sliced my thumb open, started bleeding everywhere, and then I decided, you know what I need to do? I need to go on a walk. And I remember it was ridiculously cold outside. At this point in time, I didn't know about it, but there had been a string of bicycle robberies at Penn State. That's where I went to college. And I was harassed nonstop by the security because I was walking around outside. I think it was like probably about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. And I decided I'll just go back to my room, and it was about 3 a.m., so I fell back asleep. Well, 3:30 a.m., I wake back up again and basically meander throughout the day, and I'm just tired, again, can't concentrate, fatigued, and I just walked a lot. So that was basically day one, taking naps. Part of the success of this falling asleep fast, yes, I'll get to that. Thank you for asking the question. Basically, what happens, believe me, I'll get into all the stuff that starts happening with your sleep here. This is only 10 days that before I basically conquered sleep. So it took me about 10 days to conquer sleep, and I'll cover every single one of those days. Believe me, it's not going to be that long. On day 2, the period between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., again, really, really hard During that period of time, I went again on multiple different walks. But then, whenever I was going on my second walk, I actually tripped and fell, and I cut my knee open, and again bleeding. So the first day I sliced my finger open. The second day I tripped and fell, sliced my knee open. So I hobbled my way back to school. Again, security sees me. I was out walking around in sweatpants, like light gray sweatpants, and there was blood all over my knee. And security stopped me again. And I told them I was participating in a research study. And they said, well, what's the research study? And I said, I'm only allowed to sleep 3 hours a day. And they all laughed and thought that was like the most hilarious thing. Around this time, I was starting to feel really terrible. Now, again, this is day 2. This is, so far, I have a total of probably 4 hours of sleep in 2 days. And I'm starting to feel really kind of crappy. And I wrote in my notes, today I tried to convince myself to take 2 extra naps, but decided not to. So I was so exhausted that I decided on day 2 that I was going to start cheating, but somehow I had enough wherewithal to not cheat. It was on day 2 that I started having pretty severe problems with eating. I was just not hungry, but obviously, though, I'm awake all the time, so I have to eat, but I couldn't really eat anything. Another thing that I noticed was that if I ate before a nap, even though I was completely exhausted, like I was running on 4 hours of sleep at this point in over 2 days, I couldn't fall asleep. So I started, if I could force myself to eat something, I had to do it after I woke up. This is day 2. This is whenever things started really getting bad. I realized that I started to lose the ability to hear people. Like I would walk up, I would know I talked to somebody, but as soon as I walked away from them, I couldn't remember what I had talked to the person about. This is literally minutes after I had walked away from them. And I started to really feel almost, I know this, you have to understand, I am a very experimental person, but in this regards anyway. But I just loved the experience, and I didn't really think I was doing anything to myself health-wise, so I just continued doing it, all right? So basically what happened was on day 2, 2 days into it, it's actually kind of 3 days into it now that I think about it, I kind of felt like I was just dreaming through the entire day, and interaction. I'm actually kind of surprised somebody didn't think I was drunk or on drugs. In today's world, they probably would call the police on me because I'm stumbling around, falling down very often with blood somewhere or another. But people just were like, okay, cool. And that was my go-to. Every time somebody stopped me and asked me any type of questions about what was wrong with me, I told them I was participating in a sleep study, whatever thing. That's probably what I said to them. But yeah, that's what I said, and people just were like, okay. So I guess at Penn State, at least back in those days, you could pretty much get away with anything as long as you told them you were in a research study. So that's the way it worked. Okay, we're up to day 3. This is when I started to immediately start dreaming, literally before my head hit the pillow. So I would be like, okay, it's time for my nap. I would lay down, and I didn't even remember that. Like, I would literally just immediately start dreaming, sleep. Like, I was dreaming as I was going to bed, basically, is what I wrote here in my notes. I started waking up from naps and now feeling energized and completely out of my mind, like, really ready to go. This was on day 3. Mentally, I wrote, I get into lucid dreaming actually on day 10. Day 10 is whenever I started to do that. And I started researching lucid dreaming as I was doing polyphasic sleeping, because I heard that if you do polyphasic sleeping, that lucid dreaming is very easy. I can lucid dream pretty much in this day and age, I can lucid dream in pretty much any situation now. And I think it's really because of polyphasic sleeping, because you're so aware you're dreaming all the time, because you dream multiple times a day. That's the thing with polyphasic sleeping. As soon as your head hits the pillow, you immediately fall asleep. Okay. So, at this point in time on day 3, it's actually day 4. I should say that, but whatever. Because remember the first night I didn't sleep, but whenever I took my notes, I didn't really count that. Today I felt mentally that my ability was a 6 out of 10. And I wrote yesterday I was a 1, and I was like literally daydreaming through the entire day. It was ridiculous. I overslept for one nap, but I only overslept for 30 minutes, so it wasn't really a big deal. And around this time, no, when you lucid dream, you wake up. At least for me, it really doesn't have anything. I can do it a lot in dreams. I choose not to. I just find it kind of boring. It's kind of exciting whenever you first start doing it, and then after a while, yeah, maybe it does mess you up. I don't know. Somebody just asked a question about lucid dreaming and whether you wake up more tired from it. I don't know. I didn't experiment with it enough. I can just tell you that once I got good at lucid dreaming, I kind of lost interest in lucid dreaming. I don't know. That's just the way I am. So on day 4, I'm mentally a 6 out of 10. I overslept one time on this day by 30 minutes. So I was only, like an extra 30 minutes that day. I contacted my philosophy teacher and told him that I was on day 4 of polyphasic sleeping. Well, polyphasic sleep, it's very easy. You want to dream that you live in California. Okay. Well, lucid dreaming is pretty easy if you do use polyphasic sleeping. I am not recommending doing this, by the way. This is not, I am not anything near being a medical doctor. I'm just sharing an experience that I had with you, okay? I'm not recommending this because you might get tired and walk out in front of a car and die, and I don't want to even be, disclaimer. Okay, so I see the philosophy teacher, and I tell him I'm on day 4 of my polyphasic sleep study, and he tells me, you look like it, and I told him that I couldn't eat. That's one of the biggest problems. So he told me to eat bananas, and really, he did. He told me to eat bananas, and on that day, I ate 8 bananas. I wrote that down also. And I discovered that basically the only thing I could eat was fruit. I was eating bananas, grapes, some dried fruit, and I used to eat this cereal. They had these awesome cereal machines at Penn State, and they had Cracklin' Oat Bran was my favorite one. They were like little cookies, but they were like, I don't know what they were. They were like wheat cookie things. I don't know. And they were sweet. And all I ate was bananas, grapes, and now what did I just call them? They came into my head. Cracklin' Oat Bran. That's all I ate. So I ate Cracklin' Oat Bran and fruit. So at the end of this period, I had slept for 9.5 hours over a 3-day period with no extra sleep during the day leading into it. So actually, it's basically I'd slept 9.5 hours roughly over 4 days. Okay? And I was starting to feel better. On day 4, I wrote down I'm a 7 out of 10 mentally. On this day, I was feeling so good because I used to wake up from these naps and I'd be ridiculously energized. And on that day, I actually ran 2 miles. But I got a Charlie horse in like multiple parts of my legs. And I had to like hobble. I got a Charlie horse is like a muscle cramping. If you don't know what that is, I don't know if that's like a U.S. thing or what. But anyway, it's severe cramping. I started getting severe cramping in my legs and I think in my stomach, multiple different places. I got severe muscle cramps and but I got over it. At this point in time, I didn't care about anything in the world. Like I just laid down I didn't lay down. I just sat down in the snow and just massaged my legs with people walking around and didn't care until I could get up and walk. That's one thing that that polyphasic sleep also does, is it sort of disconnects you from society, and you have a tendency, or at least I did, of just not caring. Like I would just, if my leg hurt and I wanted to sit down on the sidewalk, I would just do it. I didn't, hurt anybody or anything, but I just stopped caring about what other people thought I looked like or what I was doing was weird. I just stopped doing it. Or whatever. Again, I continue to start dreaming as soon as my head hits the pillow, sometimes before that. I don't feel bad in general. I never remember falling asleep. I wake up again full of energy. That's why I went running instead of walking. And by day 5, I had, between walking and running, I wrote that I had gone over 10 miles in 4 days, or 5 days, I guess. Again, I start having trouble eating at night. I just can't eat at night. And on day 5 is whenever I start feeling really cold. Like it was winter, obviously, but I started feeling like when you're sick cold. Like I started feeling just like I couldn't get warm. Like I would put multiple clothes on and I still was cold. But I kept going. So around this time on day 5, I started to really get the feeling that time goes on forever because I'm the only person normally, aside from security guards, that are awake at all times. And Penn State is huge. Like Penn State is a extremely large college campus, and I was basically the only person awake what seemed like at all times, constantly. So and it started to really kind of make me feel weird at this time. On this is day 5. I also started learning the names of all the security guards because they were like the only people I talked to at night. And some of them rode around on little golf carts, and it was kind of cool. So at night I would talk to them, and it was kind of a neat experience. I didn't go to a doctor. I never asked a doctor about doing this or anything. No, no, I never one time even thought that. I was 20 years old. You have to understand, I was 20 years old. And I was willing to, I was always a very curious human being. And this professor told me I could sleep for 3 hours a day and have no ill effects. And so I decided to do it. What could happen? Around this time I talked to another professor, and he was I don't know, I think he was a biology professor or something else. I started running into professors because I was like the only one of the few students walking around on campus. And he told me that actually babies, I wrote this down again, babies actually sleep exactly the way that I sleep, or the way I was sleeping now. And he also said herbivores sleep that way as well. And I said to him, at the time, I was basically a vegan. I only ate, especially while I was doing this, I was only eating fruit and like cereal. This video, not sponsored by Crackle and Oat brand, by the way. And I said, do you think that maybe that would help me? And he said, I don't know. And he left. And that was basically the end of that. I don't know. He told me that babies basically sleep in a similar well, they do. I have children. Babies fall asleep not for a half hour. I don't know how long babies sleep. A lot. But they basically wake up, sleep, wake up, sleep, wake up, sleep. I think that's what he was referring to. He wasn't referring to the fact that they sleep a half an hour. He was referring to the fact that, and they do, babies fall asleep for like, I would guess probably about 2 hours and then wake up. Another 2 hours, then wake up. I'm referring to this. And somebody just said in the notes, the average giraffe sleeps 4.6 hours per day. Okay, and they probably, I don't know, based off of what this professor told me 25 years ago, I guess that they probably wake up and fall asleep all day long. Okay, so on this day, this was day 6. No, this is day 5 still. Remember on day 1 when I was bored and I made all the food? I gave it away on day 5 because I couldn't eat it and I didn't want it to go bad. Yeah, whenever I had babies, I never had any trouble with them waking up. I couldn't eat anything except fruit and cereal. And now we're on to day 6. And I say, I've noticed I'm living life while sleeping. And this is something that was really strange. Whenever I would fall asleep, all my dreams had to do with me either being at work or me being in class. And on this, day 6, I actually fell asleep, and while I was sleeping, I solved a problem that I literally was working on something, and I went out on a couch. I used to work it was called the Computer Building. I don't know if it still uses that terrible name, but that's where I worked. At Penn State. It was called the Computer Building. And that's where I worked. And I fell asleep on a couch. And before my nap, I was working on a problem. I laid down on the couch. I know I fell asleep. I dreamed about myself solving the problem that I was working on before I fell asleep. I woke up from my nap, went back to the desk, and sure enough, I solved the problem while I was sleeping. And I did that in a half an hour. So now it was almost like my sleeping, I was also productive during my 30-minute sleep period, which is ridiculous. And like I said, dreams don't feel like normal dreams anymore. This is day 6. Another thing that happened was I wanted coffee ridiculously bad, and I decided that it was really about warmth because I was freezing all the time, and I just couldn't get warm. That was one of the big problems I had. I needed to walk or run, but I couldn't walk or run outside because I was so cold. And I got somebody to give me a key. They literally gave me a key to the weight room that had a treadmill inside of it. And I used to go in there multiple times a day, and I would walk on the treadmill for like an hour every single day, normally multiple hours a day. I do simple work. I also decided I was highly productive during the day, but I was not productive at night. So what I would do is I would do all my simple work at night, like I would cook, I would eat, I would do exercise and things like that. And during the regular day, I at this point on day 6, I really wasn't affected. I could continue basically working very, very well. At this point in time, also on day 6, I felt like I was getting a more severe cold. So like a cold. And I also noticed at work that I was starting to have trouble with my fine motor skills, like typing. That was mainly, I had fine motor skill problems earlier in this sleep study, but at this point in time, it was basically the only thing at work that I was having trouble doing, which I was a system administrator, so being able to type was kind of important. So that's what was going on day 6. And again, I was started about the only time I ever had any severe problems was between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. And that's when I was doing that dream sort of out of focus thing that I talked about before. Now we're on to day 7. I said that I was a 9 mentally. I felt great, is what I wrote. I overslept by 30 minutes again, one time at 3 a.m. And I started questioning whether I actually was required to have 3.5 hours of sleep, but I decided to just keep pushing forward, and I just kept doing it. And at this point in time, this was day 7, I started to get into a groove where I would break my days up between naps, and I was getting ridiculous amounts of stuff done. I'm still cold. I'm still eating tons of bananas and cereal. And on this day, they ran out of crackling oat bran at the cafeteria, so I ate oatmeal. And warm oatmeal. And previous to this, I hated oatmeal, but I was so freezing cold all the time that I decided to eat warm oatmeal. And I started eating oatmeal multiple times a day. Like I'd eat oatmeal 3 times a day with bananas and grapes and all this other stuff. Day 7. Yeah, I made it to day 7. At some point, I write how many total hours on the next thing, I talk about how many total hours I slept over the 7-day period. Again, now at this point in time, day 7, I start waking up immediately whenever the alarm, and sometimes I wake up before the alarm. So at this point in time on day 7, I'm actually sleeping less than 30 minutes a day, which is kind of crazy. And at this point also, I stop going to my room at all to sleep. I start sleeping literally wherever. I never want to miss a nap, because I'm sort of like feeling like I'm in a groove and I don't want to get it. I don't want to waste it. So I'm like, I can never miss a nap. So no matter where I am, I'm just going to take a nap. And I remember I took naps in classrooms. I took naps at our office, in our office couch. I took naps in the lobby. I could fall asleep anywhere. Like I could be surrounded by people talking, making insane amounts of noise. And I lay down literally anywhere and instantly fall asleep. Again, day 8, no brain fog. And at this point in time, after 7 days, I had slept a total of 22 hours over a 1-week period. Yes, I used an alarm. I used an alarm that went off every half hour. But at this point, I wasn't even sleeping a half an hour every time. I was sleeping about 25 minutes is what I estimated. So after 1 week, I slept 22 hours. And actually, based off of what I just said, I actually most of the time I was waking up 25 minutes into my sleep and not 30. I only overslept 2 times, and the 2 times I overslept, I only overslept by a half an hour, so it wasn't really a big deal. Again, I mainly snacked on fruit, grapes, dried fruit, and oatmeal all day. That was the only thing I could stomach to eat. I get ridiculous amounts of stuff done. It was on day 8 that I got my ability to read again. Prior to that, I would fall asleep every single time. I would start to nod off whenever I was doing that. And actually on day 8, I was so bored, I had a class in thermodynamics, and I went through a fourth of the book on thermodynamics in one day, and I solved all the problems. Like I was on Christmas break, so I had time to do it. And I solved 1/4 of my thermodynamics course in one day because I was just bored and I just did it. And at this point in time, I started to feel like a robot. Like I was starting to really feel like I was almost completely disconnected from society, and that I just basically was no longer a real human being, and I was a robot that just plugged themselves in for 30 minutes every couple hours and then just kept going. And that's exactly what it felt like. On day 9, I ran 4 miles. Brain fog was 100% gone. I had to wait an extra hour today to... this is the first time my sleep actually got messed up. I had to wait an extra hour to take my nap, but it didn't affect me. I was tired, but perfectly fine. But you didn't sleep 7 hours if you slept 22 in a week. What's that mean? But I didn't sleep 7 hours if you slept 22 in a week. I don't know what that means. I overslept 2 times. So that's how it adds up to 22. Oh, yeah. 3, yeah. Okay, you got me. So I missed a nap, and I still was cool. However, if I ever rode in a car for some unknown reason, I would almost instantly fall asleep. I like couldn't keep myself awake, even with loud music and everything. And I haven't been, of course, I didn't drive during this entire period. I was driven. I mainly walked and ran everywhere. But a couple times I had to go places, and I had other people drive. On day 9, I started eating normally. And at this point in time, I decided that I was going to start playing with the idea of having an extra 30 minutes, adding an extra 30 minutes to my nap, because my 3 p.m. nap was starting to conflict with my work schedule. And I was like, can I add an extra 30 minutes to one of my naps and then eliminate my 3 p.m. nap altogether? And this was on day 9 that I got that idea. My naps at this point on day 9 are down to 25 minutes, so I'm sleeping less than 30 minutes. I wake up most of the time without an alarm at this point. I don't even need my alarm. And I checked my weight, and I had lost 12 pounds in 1 week. But that might sound like a lot but I was like pretty overweight whenever I was going to college at this point in time. So losing 12 pounds at that point really wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, so we're on to day 10. There's 2 days left, and then I basically come to the conclusion of the entire study. On day 10, I wrote, feeling good. I'm wide awake after naps, no matter what time of day it is. The hardest time is still 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., but it was mainly because of boredom more than anything else. I started listening to books on tape. Yes, I was using cassette tapes. This was back in 1995, whenever I was doing this. So I was listening to books on tape. And I just started running. So basically between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., I would either run or walk and listen to books on tape, like constantly. And I just wrote, I'm mainly bored, and I still can't read during that time. So I couldn't read between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. But I was doing books and tapes and basically exercising for like 3 hours straight. On day 11, this is the last day that I wrote about, I eliminated my 3 p.m. nap, and I added an hour at 3 a.m. So now I'm still sleeping for not even 3 hours, but I moved my 3 p.m. 30 minutes to my 3 a.m. So now 3 a.m. I would try to sleep for an hour, and I felt no ill effects. And at this point in time, I decided that I wanted to get rid of my 11 p.m. and my 7 a.m. nap and sleep for 2 hours at 3 a.m. with 2 other naps during the day at 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. On the last day that I talked about it, I drank green tea, and I couldn't fall asleep at 11 p.m. And even though there's not that much caffeine in green tea, it had a major effect on me. I did not drink alcohol during this entire period. Um, oh, okay, that's cool. Believe me, when I was doing this, I wasn't doing that great at math either. I wrote at this point in time, days don't feel like days anymore. Like I said, I would very often fall asleep and I would work. I would dream about being at work, and it almost felt like I never slept because I would fall asleep. I can't remember the process of falling asleep. Like I would wake up from it in a couch and I'd be like, I remember coming here, but I don't remember laying down in the couch, but I would just wake up. It was really weird. So on day 11, I started to lose. Really, I started to feel like I never slept. And it was really very, very strange. Do you feel that time is moving slower or faster? Really slow. Extremely slow. Because there's nobody around. There's literally no distractions. This was, back in the day, the internet existed, but it doesn't exist the way that it does now. So there was really nothing to do except exercise and listen to books on tape and read thermodynamics books. Like I started doing all my coursework for the semester coming up ahead of time because I was just bored. No, I did not drink at all over this entire period of time. No alcohol at all. And I drank green tea and it messed me up. Alcohol, I actually remember drinking alcohol later and it also really messed me up. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think it might have had something to do with my diet also, because remember, I was eating basically fruit and oatmeal. So that was like my entire diet. So yeah, really messed up. And it was on day 11 that I started lucid dreaming. And on this day, I tried to fly. I had a dream about being in the office, and I tried to fly, but I couldn't do it. And by this point, at the end of the 11-day study, I was averaging 2.5 to 3 hours of sleep with absolutely no issues. And I continued to do that for a long time and never really had any problems. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. That's basically it. So you can see there the process of when it was really, really bad, which was basically what days were really, really bad. Day 1 wasn't that bad. I felt a little tired. Day 2 was kind of bad. And day 3, sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming as I approach nap time. Yeah, day 2 and 3 were really terrible. Day 2 was the worst day. Day 3 was less worse. And by day 4, I was starting to feel better, except I started having muscle cramps and I started getting cold. And on day 5, again, I was still cold, but I started really walking a lot and no problem. By day 6, I was feeling pretty good. By day 7, brain fog was completely eliminated. And yeah, so that's basically it. So really, if you can get past day 2 and 3, you can do it. At least I could.